got into a conversation today about creating meaningful user content, and so I'll just turn this down a little bit so it's not talking so loud in my face. But today's conversation was about making big words. People use particular language within industries, but for an outsider that may not necessarily be the best thing to talk about. And so I want to give an illustration. There was a particular series on HBO called the Newsroom, and in this particular scene that I'm going to show, and a subsequent one afterwards, the interesting thing with this was that they get in and they talk about a particular topic which is fairly lengthy and heavy, and make it into something that people can understand. So the first clip goes from here.
Excuse me, can you tell me where Don Kiefer's office is?
It's right over there. You see the name of the door.
Thank you.
Come in.
Good morning. I'm Sloan Sabbath. I work on day.
Yeah, I know you. Market ripoff of Sloan Sabbath.
Wrap up.
I'm kidding. It's just what we call it.
Yeah.
It's not a joke about you or the show. It's more about how the banks played a little fast and loose with the subprime mortgages.
It's fine. On Dayside, we call you the executive producer of Trainwreck with Will McAvoy.
It's not as clever as market ripoff because it doesn't have the same alliterative relationship to it. You know what? How can I help you?
Friday night, you had Rothstein on. It was right after the totally newsworthy segment on the season finale of 24.
It was the series finale, and do you have a problem with Jack Bauer?
I've got a problem with Jake Rothstein, and now I've got a problem with Will McAvoy.
Sounds like your problem with Will started before last night.
It did, but that's neither here nor there. Rothstein said it's perfectly legitimate for their firm, referring to Goldman, to have sold off those toxic assets that were exposing them to risk. The people who bought them from us should have known better.
You did that without notes.
Yeah, and you know what McAvoy's follow-up was? We'll be right back after this.
You'd have liked to have seen a tougher follow-up.
Tougher?
You'd have liked to have seen a tough follow-up.
Or any. How about this? Wasn't the twisted brilliance of the big banks that they managed to conceal a bunch of subprime mortgages inside a collection of other more legitimate mortgage-backed securities?
That wasn't a loaded question.
I'll deload it. How would these customers know that these assets were toxic since the established companies gave them a AAA rating?
You have your own show, and you're free to ask your guests any questions you'd like.
And I would have, but my guest, Jacob Rothstein, was poached by your booker so your boss could ask him if he watches 24. This is one of the people who caused the crash and is freely roaming the countryside.
Sloan, you came down here and insulted my anchor and demanded to know why we didn't prepare a better interview. Let me add this to the conversation. For 2 years, I've been listening to people like you say they can't believe no one's been prosecuted for these Wall Street crimes, and after 2 years, I'm still fuzzy on what crime was committed and who should be prosecuted for it. You're a financial news reporter who gets to spend an hour on one subject, and I'm at least an average consumer of news, and you have failed to get me to understand what you've called the most important story of the last 10 years. So after you get done telling me how badly we did our job last night, you may want to do an internal investigation of your own work. Visit us anytime you want.
And so with this particular
Markets rely on Standard & Poor's to objectively rate debt, but the companies that want a favorable debt rating are the same companies that pay Standard & Poor's. You follow so far?
And so
Banks wrote a ton of bad mortgages to people they knew were going to default. It's called predatory lending. Then hid those bad mortgages inside good mortgages to shine up the books for S&P, which gave them AAA ratings. Then they'd bundle the whole thing and sell the debt to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which is owned by
you and me.
Yes. And then the banks bet on those loans defaulting. Not that much different from fixing a college basketball game, except a ton of people wind up broke and homeless. Those people can't buy things anymore, so businesses start going out of business, and more people are broke. When you start eliminating consumers, you start eliminating jobs, which eliminates consumers, which eliminates...
So I'll just run through the next bit and then explain a bit more and finish for this video.
Yeah.
Markets rely on Standard & Poor's to objectively rate debt, but the companies that want a favorable debt rating are the same companies that pay Standard & Poor's. You follow so far?
Yeah.
Banks wrote a ton of bad mortgages to people they knew were going to default. It's called predatory lending. Then hid those bad mortgages inside good mortgages to shine up the books for S&P, which gave them AAA ratings. Then they'd bundle the whole thing and sell the debt to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which is owned by...
You and me.
Yes. And then the banks bet on those loans defaulting. Not that much different from fixing a college basketball game, except a ton of people wind up broke and homeless. Those people can't buy things anymore, so businesses start going out of business, and more people are broke. When you start eliminating consumers, you start eliminating jobs, which eliminates consumers, which eliminates jobs, which eliminates consumers, and you see where this is going?
I'm no longer the EP of Newsnight.
What happened?
Charlie's bringing in a new EP, and I'm moving to 10 o'clock, where Elliot Hirsch is taking over.
I'm sorry.
Will blew the Rothstein interview. He doesn't like to appear rude, except when he's not on TV. We'd have done everyone a favor if we'd let you keep him as a guest. Have a good night.
So in this whole series, they talk about different aspects of telling stories and stuff. So I really wasn't interested in that. I was more interested in that particular thing, in how to actually change the verbiage, how to change the meaning of something so the average person can understand what is said, what is meant, and can actually understand so they can go and comprehend, which is probably more important with what's been said. So in that, I just wanted to explain that because it came up in conversation. It was just really relevant and important. The other thing that was in that also is that we talk about government, and when I listen to someone talk about government, I think about politicians as my first thought. Now, government is probably a lot wider than that. There's a lot more scope in who talks and what they actually do, what people do with politicians or with departments and all the like. But does that really mean government, or is that just an institution that represents people? But my first impression with government is government means they're the politicians, right? And they're a real turn-off. So are you giving content out, or are you talking about content that actually means something to you, or does it mean something else to someone else that they and their interpretation? Remember, we make content so that others can watch, not what we believe they want, but what they actually understand to want. So that was the purpose of this. But thanks very much. It's Michael. If you want to have a chat with me about anything, I'm more than welcome to discuss different events and different things that are coming up. But I just thought I'd post that just to see what was giving and what was happening. But thank you very much for watching.